All right, looks like we've filled up a good amount. So, Menelik, if you want to get us started, I'll go ahead and take over from there after you get us rolling.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jesse. And hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Menelik, and I'm a university recruiter over at Visa. We are super excited to be participating in the KSU Hackathon this week, and I hope you guys are equally as excited. With me today, I have my colleague Jesse, who's a senior director in our cybersecurity team. And as many of you know, our hackathon challenge will be the Capture the Flag challenge. And so Jesse's going to go over kind of a more extensive deep dive over the CTF and all the intricacies and everything that has to do with the challenge. So I will hand it over to you, Jesse.
Sounds great. Thanks. Let me get this going. Make sure everybody can see my screen here.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Thanks, Menelik. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump right into this. We're gonna real quick just kind of talk a little bit about some of the details of the CTF, some of the rules of engagement. Uh, Give you kind of a quick talk about some of the tools that you'll need and a demo to kind of show you how to use at least one of them, and where to go and what kind of questions that you might need to ask during the challenge, how to get support if you run into some problems or issues. We'll go through that, and then at the very end we'll give you everything that you need to actually get started and get rolling with this. So at the end of this presentation will be basically the start of the contest, and we'll go from there. Um, so I guess a few things to kind of go over. Like I mentioned at the very end of this presentation, I'll give everybody a URL that they can use to get started. It's going to give you access to a very simple registration site. Uh, each each team is going to register just one account. So please don't register multiple ones, because each person is going to get their own unique website to test on. And they're all basically the same, but they're unique. As you go through and solve challenges, as you exploit vulnerabilities, you're going to get credits. The credit from one site won't work with a user from another one. So when you go through the registration site, just pick one email to use that you're going to register for the whole team. The sites are deliberately vulnerable, right? So we're making applications and putting them out there on the internet that are deliberately vulnerable applications that have real security vulnerabilities that you can exploit. That being said, we want to limit exposure ourselves for anything that we have, and even though there's separations between the registration and scoring sites and the target sites, we still want to be careful about how we deal with the information that we have there. So one of the easiest way to do that is just we don't really store any information on the site. So you're going to use your email address to register, but we're not going to store that email address in the registration site. We're not going to ask you for your name or address or first name or anything else. We're just going to use that email address to send you activation links and to send you the information that you need to get started and rolling. So that said, though, I don't necessarily have a log of who's who. So what I'm going to ask of you guys is, after you register, you're going to be given essentially a code name, and that code name will be what you're going to use to track your score and score throughout the event. So what I'd ask is that after you've registered your one account, if you can send me an email, or if you want to post it to the Visa Discord channel, that'll work too. But if you can give me your information in some way, shape, or form that says, here's the code name that we have, and here are the team members for that code name. Again, the reason being is because we're deliberately not storing that information in our deliberately vulnerable sites. So if you can get that to me out of band, either via email or Discord, that would be great. That way I can kind of keep track of who's attached to which code names throughout the event. The contest will start at the end of this presentation, and we will continue until Thursday night at the very end of the night. So 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. I should have put that on there, but it's Eastern time. on Thursday is when we'll shut down the scoring site, so you won't be able to score any additional points at that point in time. So we're trying to go through the site, find as many vulnerabilities that we can exploit, find as many credits as we can to score as many points we can within this period of time. I guess a couple things just on the flow of the registration. If you want to use a throwaway email address, you can. I think I'm going to get. I think I have a list of all the people who chose to participate, so I have their email addresses. If I need to send something out during the contest, some sort of notification, I'll do that in the Visa Discord channel, and also do it via the email addresses I have. So if you want to register with the throwaway email address, that doesn't matter to me. You can use whatever you want. The basic flow is you'll put in your email address. We'll email you an activation link. You'll hit that activation link, and then we'll email you the instructions to get started. So if you have any problem with that process at the very beginning, I guess first thing to do is check your junk mail. There's a good chance that our emails will get thrown off into junk mail. But if not, feel free to reach out to me, and I can kind of look into it. Hopefully, that should go pretty smoothly and pretty easily. All right, so rules of engagement for this. Number one, when you register, we're going to give you your own specific URL that's unique to you, and that will be the one URL that we ask you to limit your testing to. So you're going to get an email that'll give you the test URL. What I ask is that is the only place that you do any sort of testing. Don't try to connect off to somebody else's URL and try to play with their app. Don't do any security testing on the scoring site, and don't do any security testing on the registration site. So limit all your testing just to that one URL that we've sent you. Again, there's somewhat limited resources here, so please only register one email per team. Just have that one site, so we don't spin up a million extra sites that aren't needed. Teams can have up to 3 members. It's also one member or 2 members fine, but no more than 3, please. If you guys want to use automated tools to test, that is fine. If you guys want to run scans, you're more than welcome to do that. The vulnerabilities and the exploits are kind of designed in a way that really that's not necessary. So there's nothing here that you really need to be able to use an automated tool to find. But if you want to, you can, and that's okay. I would ask that you are cognizant of potential performance problems, right? And if you kick something off, do it in a way that's, I guess a little bit conservative in the speed, right? And if it does start causing performance problems, if you're kicking off scans with 30 threads running and hammering the server, I may reach out to you and ask you to shut them down or throttle them down to a slower speed. Most of the time, I don't think that ends up happening, but it could potentially be. So you're welcome to use scanners if you want. At the same point in time, you don't need to. Everything throughout here you can find and exploit without scanners, and in some ways, some of them are specifically designed to make it so running a scanner isn't necessarily going to be helpful to you. So if you want to kind of spend your whole time just manually testing, that would be a good enough. The other part of that kind of goes along with that is brute force attacks are not going to be necessary, and they're most likely not going to be successful at all. So you're trying to guess a password or crack a password hash that you find, it's probably going to be a waste of your time. Most of the passwords are set to be long random passwords that are not going to be something that's going to be in a word list or something that's going to be feasible to brute force in any reasonable amount of time, especially within the time frame that we have for this. So you're more than welcome to try, but I would avoid trying to do a online password guessing attack to get into an administrative account. It'll probably not be worth your time. If you do find some password hashes or encrypted data, trying to brute force keys or brute force hashes are most likely going to fail. And so I would avoid taking your time to do that. But you are more than welcome to if you would like. All right, we kind of mentioned this at the previous meeting, but as far as the tools go, the tools that you will need for this, there's really only one thing that you'll need is you'll need some sort of personal web proxy. So this is this event is going to be a vulnerable web application, and the exploits and vulnerabilities and everything that you're going to be working on is pretty much exclusively, for the most part, just web application issues and vulnerabilities. So you need to be able to have some basic tools that you would use to audit a web application. Main tool that you have there is just some sort of proxy that you can use to intercept the requests that you send to the web application and intercept and view and change them, as well as view the responses back from the web application. So there's a number of different tools here. You might have your own personal favorites and you can use whatever will work for you. Here's a few options. Burp Proxy, I'd say, is kind of the industry standard right now. There's a free version of it, but there's some limitations on what it allows you to do. So that might be one way to go. Zed Attack Proxy is made by OWASP. That's 100% free and there's no limitations. That might be another route. Some people have used Fiddler. I know that's somewhat popular. Charles Proxy is something that'll work with Mac OS if you want. But you'll need some sort of web proxy that you can use, and I'll kind of give you a quick demo on what that might look like. Having some sort of a skill with a scripting or programming language might come in helpful too. There are a few challenges where you'll probably have to script something out to get past. Not many, but there are a couple where that'll probably be required. So this could be anything. There's no specific language that you need to know, but you might want to have that kind of tool in your tool belt for certain places. So if you know Python or PowerShell, or you want to write a Java app, doesn't really matter. But there's probably a couple places where you'll need that. All right, so I'm going to give us a quick demo here. Give me just a second. All right. So what I'm going to do is just give us a quick demo of Burp Proxy, which again, you don't have to use this one, but it's pretty commonly used. And there is a free version of it that limits a few features though. But essentially, this here is Burp Proxy. There's a lot of different tabs. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do with it. Burp specifically right now comes with its own built-in browser that you can open up. And basically whatever I browse through in this built-in browser is going to get tunneled through Burp Proxy, and I'll see the requests and responses there. I can take them and I can start making manipulations there. If you're using something other than Burp that doesn't have a built-in browser as well too, you're always going to have some place where you can see what port's listening on, and you can point your browser to that. So you can see on this one, it's listening on my loopback address on port 8080. So if I want to, I can bring up a different browser. I don't have to use the built-in browser. This is Firefox. In Firefox, I'm going to go to Options. And I'm going to go set my network settings. I'm going to set my proxy settings to tunnel everything through localhost on port 8080. And so what happens here now is all the requests are going through this proxy before they go out to the internet. And so I can see those here on my HTTP history. I can see the requests from my browser and what it's doing and where it's going. I can look at, if I want, I can intercept one of these requests in here, and most proxies will have a way to do this. So if I intercept it, it's going to stop the request right away. So here's the HTTP request that my browser's making. You can see the cookies that are being sent. You can see whatever parameters are being sent. I can forward it over. Here's another request. And send that one on its way, right? We can block them. We can see what they're doing. And if we look in the history, we can do things like, here's usa.visa.com. I can see a request down here, and I can see the responses that are coming back. Right. So we're going to use this while we're going through and looking for things that we can manipulate and looking for credits that are stored on the site, looking for things that we could change and cause the application to behave in a way that's that it's not meant to be. So different things that I could do is I could intercept them and make changes there. Most of them will have some way to manually make changes as well to requests and see the responses. So in Burp, I can take a request from here and I can send it to something called repeater. Depending if you're using a different web proxy, there'll be a something similar. It'll have a different name though, but in Burp it's called repeater. So repeaters here, a place where I can just manually make adjustments, and a lot of your testing might end up being right here, where I send something, I see the response, and then I can come up here and make some changes, right? So what I said, maybe change the parameter and see how that changes the responses. So when we're going through and we're testing a site, we're doing web application security, which is basically what this one is, or really any kind of security. I think there's kind of a few basic approaches that you have. Number one is you really want to look at things from what I would call a security kind of point of view or a security mindset, which is a little bit different than maybe a normal engineering mindset. Or a development mindset. So, engineers and developers are trying to figure out what they need to do to solve a problem. They're trying to figure out what they need to do to make something work. When you're looking at this web application that we're going to do this week, or any other application, or if you're reviewing a security architecture or doing a code review, and you have that security mindset, you're looking at things from a different point of view rather than looking at something and seeing what we need to do to make it work. You're trying to think of all the different ways that you can possibly break this and make it do something that it's not supposed to do. So it's a little bit of a change in mindset if that's not something that you're used to doing. And so when you're going through this challenge, that you want to kind of keep that in mind. And this isn't my example, but it's I forget who I stole this from, but it's a good one that's kind of stuck in my head. I remember years back there was some new product. It was kind of basically an anti-theft product called DNA water that was put out there. I think that's the name. It's probably something else, but it doesn't really matter too much. But the magic of this is you could take this spray and you could spray things that you owned of value, and it would leave a kind of a DNA mark on it. So the idea being is that I could spray this kind of invisible spray on, my TV, and then if it was ever stolen, I could go back and I could test it, and I could prove to everybody that that was my TV, right? So it left kind of a unique mark on it, and was something that was semi-permanent, and you could test it later on and prove that it tracked back to you. So it was really kind of an interesting piece of technology, but the reason I bring it up because I think there was a good point somebody pointed out when that came out. I remember reading somewhere on a blog or Twitter or somewhere else where somebody who had a security mindset saw the product, and rather than saying, "Wow, that's neat, I can help protect my valuables," their first thought was, "Well, that's great. What I'm going to do is buy that product, and I'm going to go start spraying the DNA on other people's valuables." And so that would be that was just kind of a fun example of that security mindset, right? How can we take this thing and start using it and abusing it in ways that you shouldn't? Rather than using this to protect my valuables, I'll spray it on your stuff, and then I can make a claim to all your stuff. And that's the kind of mindset that we want to use when we're going through and testing out this application. So as you go through and look at all the different functionality in the application, and look at all the different pages that are there and what they do. What I like to do is, on each page that I look at the functionality. You try to predict what do you think it's doing in the back end, right? You make a model in your head about what it's doing, and then you start coming up with what I would call abuse cases. You start thinking of different ways that you may be able to abuse it and to cause it to do something that it's not supposed to do, and potentially something that it's not supposed to do that would benefit an attacker. Uh, so this may be simple, right? If you go to a page that you see a login exists, one of the abuse cases that you would automatically come up with is maybe I can log in with easy credentials. Maybe there's a default password. Maybe there's a way that I can bypass the authentication altogether. Maybe I don't really need to authenticate to it, and I can just directly hit the pages behind that authentication wall. You see a search page and you say, you can see that some of the text is reflected back, and you start thinking, well, maybe I can reflect back other code and make it a cross-site scripting. If you want to, you can kind of take notes as you go through. A lot of people like that, but that's kind of one of the places that I like to start, is just kind of look at all the functionality, try to make some predictions about what the way it functions, and kind of come up with a list of things that you want to try to abuse on each one of those pages that you think might be beneficial to you. From there, kind of once you have your abuse cases, what you're really doing a lot of times, at least in my opinion, in some of these kind of web app testing or other kind of penetration testing, is you're trying to predict and model how you think an application acts, and then you make small scale experiments to see if your prediction is true or false. And if it's false, you kind of make adjustments to that prediction. And if it's true, you see if you can exploit it in some way, shape, or form. So, for example, I might have a form on a web page that I think might be vulnerable to SQL injection. So if that's the case, I'm making a model in my head where I think that there's an underlying SQL query in the back end that's just an inline query that's accepting data from me as an end user. So if that model of the universe is true, then there's certain things that I can do to test that and experiment that, right? So for a common example with a SQL injection would be, well, I'll put in a single quote and see if that breaks that underlying query. If we see in the response some sort of breakage or error message or something else, then that may be a true assumption, and we kind of start digging deeper from there and start putting in more experiments. And so that's what you're going to be kind of doing throughout this whole process. Is you're going to browse through. You're going to kind of take that security mindset. You're going to browse through the website. You're going to start coming up with the abuse cases of things that you want to test, things that you might think would be useful as an attacker to get to. You're going to start modeling and predicting how you think it might be working in the back end, and then you're going to throw a bunch of experiments to see if those assumptions are true. And in places where those assumptions are true and lead to vulnerabilities, then you kind of keep modifying your experiment until you get actually some sort of result, right? Some sort of exploit, something that can help there. So again, just kind of showing this tool specifically. This is one that'll help you with it, Burp, but you can use any different type. I think the main places where you're going to live is right here in the either intercepting the requests and responses, right here in the browser history or the HTTP history, where I can kind of look at each one. And then when you're ready to start testing things, you're probably going to send them over to Repeater, and then start making your changes here to what you're testing, right? Send requests and see how they respond. That'll probably be where you live most of the time. There's also things like an intruder built into Burp, which is nifty. It lets you send lots of requests and kind of iterate through word lists or other types of lists. There's a scanner built in, although you won't have access to the actual active scanner with the free version. Attack Proxy does have a scanner that you could use, but again, it's not necessarily something that you will need. All right, I think I'm going to pause there for just a second. I know I'll take some questions at the very end, but before I move on from this, just the kind of quick tool demo and talk about some of the mindset. I want to stop here and see if anybody has any questions on this before I jump ahead and keep going. So I'll open it up for a few minutes here if anybody has questions. If nobody has them, then I'll keep going. All right, let me stop presenting. Doesn't look like we have any questions on this specifically, so let me bring back up my PowerPoint presentation just a second.
Hey, Jess, if you're talking, I think you might be on mute.
Oh, yep, sorry. I
No
am.
worries.
Okay. Uh, I am. Thank you. All right. So let me regain my train of thought. All right. So there's no questions on the demo. We'll move on from there. Here's some basic resources available to you while you're testing, though. There's plenty of great resources out there all over the place. Do your Google searches. If you're trying to figure out how to exploit some type of vulnerability, go ahead and do a search for that type of vulnerability, and you'll probably find a lot of good information. But a few places that you can start. There's the OWASP testing guide. OWASP has a lot of great information. The testing guide has a basic overall idea on how you should look at testing a web application. Same thing with the penetration execution standard. A lot of times when there's new penetration testers, I'll recommend them using kind of a checklist approach where they're using one of these standards or our own internal standard and kind of going through and making sure they cover all their bases so they don't forget to look for SQL injection flaws and don't forget to look for authentication bypass flaws. So using kind of some of these testing guides or checklists is a good way to do that. So if you're new to it, that might be a route to go, is to go through somebody else's guide, go through somebody else's checklist, and make sure you hit all the kind of abuse cases that somebody else has already enumerated for you. OWASP also has a bunch of cheat sheets, which are really good. These are kind of there'll be a SQL injection cheat sheet and a cross-site scripting cheat sheet and a authorization problem cheat sheet, and they'll kind of have a cheat sheet for almost any sort of web application vulnerability flaw that you have out there. So that might be a good place to look, especially if you know that you suspect there's a flaw in a certain place and you want to dive a little bit deeper, you need some help. Those are good starting points. They have a lot of good information there. Now, during the event, though, I guess a few things here. If you do need help during the event, there's a couple different places that you can go. Number one, you can go to the Visa channel on Discord. I will be monitoring that. Feel free to ask any questions there. If you have a question that you feel may give away some of the answers and you don't want everybody else to see it, feel free to direct message me, or feel free to also email me. You can email hackerchallenge@visa.com with any questions here. So you may have a question that you might want to answer, but if you're afraid that if you ask it on the Discord channel, it may give away some of the things that you figured out. So that's fine if you want to talk to me directly, and that'll work. That being said, during the event, most of my answers and most of my support that I'm going to provide here is going to be technical support if there's any sort of problems. So this is a contest. The web application that you guys are going to be testing is designed to be vulnerable. It has things that are essentially deliberately broken. It has some certain things that function in a funny way, and that's intended. So there's a good chance if you think something's broken that it is, and that's the way it's supposed to be, and not something that's really broken or really not functioning. So if you reach out to me, I can kind of I can maybe confirm to you that everything looks okay. I can look into it, see if there's actually something really not functioning with your site. But for the most part, my answers during this event are going to be probably seem a little bit obtuse, right? And the reason being because it is a contest, it is directly, deliberately vulnerable deliberately vulnerable application, and we're really trying to uh, emulate what a real world pen tester will go through when they're auditing a web application here. So if you ask, hey, I found this place that looks like it's vulnerable to SQL injection, but when I put this in, I'm not getting the query results that I expected back. That's probably not going to be something I'm going to help you with, because that would be kind of giving you an unfair advantage, right? That's helping you through the actual exploitation of a vulnerability or the identification of a vulnerability, and that's not something that we'll do, at least during the contest. So if I do kind of give you answers, I guess that seem obtuse or deliberately unhelpful, it's most likely that means that you're asking something where I can't answer without giving you an unfair advantage, right? That being said, all the answers at the end of the contest will be revealed. I'll leave the sites up, and I'll once the contest's end, I'm happy to answer any questions. And we'll have a full walkthrough at the end of the week here, where I'll take you through all the vulnerabilities that exist in there, all the different ways to score points, and I'll walk you through each one of them and show you how to do them all. So once the contest is over, then feel free to open up the floodgates and ask whatever questions you want. During the contest, though, my answers will probably be a little bit short and not give you very much help, unless there really is some sort of technical issue. For the most part, you should be safe to do whatever kind of testing that you want on your application. And you should not be able to put yourself into a corner or back yourself into a corner that you can't get out of. But there are a few ways that you can back yourself into a corner during this event. The most common is if you change a password without realizing it, or if you change a password and you forget your password. So those two come up often, where maybe somebody changed a password for an account and now they forgot it and they can't get back into that account that they need to move further forward, right? Or if you maybe we're kicking off automated scanners and that automated scanner changed the password, nobody even realized they changed the password. So if you feel like you got backed into a corner, or if you feel like anything's not working correctly, uh, I won't reset passwords for you, I won't change things for you, but what I will be able to do is reset your whole web application back to its original state. So that's kind of the default fix for any sort of problems I have. So if you think things are a little bit off, or you think that you backed yourself into a corner with some of the stuff that you were doing, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Say, hey, I think this isn't working right, or hey, maybe I changed the password and I don't remember what it is. My one solution that I can give everybody easily is I can reset your system back to the starting point, right? And that doesn't affect your score that you've scored up until now. All your same points will still be there. It just takes the web application that you're testing in and sets it back to the original state. So any changes that you may have made, like changing passwords of accounts, will go back to the way they were when they started. As the contest progresses, I'll kind of be monitoring how many points have been scored and where people are scoring points, and I'll make some decisions about hints to send out. So I guess if everybody's rolling through it and getting close to finding everything, I may send out no hints. But usually, after a day or so, I can kind of get a feeling where people are getting stuck and where people most need the most help, and I'll come up with some hints. I'll send them out via email, and I'll also post them in the Visa Discord channel, so you can kind of be aware of those and be on the lookout for those, and that might help push people along as we go on. All right. So that said, to get started, this is the URL that you will go to: reg.inutilum.com. It's a registration page. You put in an email address. It'll send you an activation link, and then you follow the activation link, and then it'll send you an email that gives you your code name. It gives you a starting credit that you can use to score and make sure the scoring application is working right for you. And most importantly, it'll give you your URL that you can actually use to start through the testing. So I will leave this up here. I'll make sure I get the list of email addresses. I will send out the URL to the email addresses, and I'll also post it in the Visa Discord channel as well too. So basically, at this point, you guys can get started. And again, this is going to go through until Thursday, 11:59 Eastern time is when I'll shut it off. I will leave. I'll shut off the scoring on Thursday, but I will leave the web applications up so you guys can kind of keep going. All right, and after the contest ends, that's a place where I'm willing to answer any questions from anybody. Right, once we've kind of closed off the contest, then if you want to ask more questions or do some more practice testing afterwards, that's just fine. I think that takes me to the end of all the things that I wanted to talk about. I will stop again here and open it up for any questions that anybody has before we wrap it up today. So
Hey,
anybody's
Jess.
got a, go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. There is a question in the chat. Raul is asking if each person on the team registers at the URL.
No, just one registration per team, please. So again, to kind of go through the process, just it could be any email address, it could even be a throwaway email address, but just one registration per team, because we're going to spin up your own container that has kind of your own website to test, and just one registration per team. Double check your spam folder. And then after you've registered, though, if you could please either post in the Visa Discord channel or email me at hackerchallenge@visa.com your code name and your team members, because again, the registration site, we're not storing any of that information. I'm not keeping track of that. That's deliberate because we have deliberately vulnerable web applications out there. So if you can get to me either in the Discord channel or via email, here's my here's my code name and here's the team members. That way we can kind of keep track of them out of band. But just one registration per team, please.
All right. Thank you. And then it looks like Victoria has a question. Will we know when we get points automatically?
So when you're testing, you're going to be looking for credits in your web application. All the credits are going to have the same pattern, right? They'll be 44 characters long and they'll start with 1337. So when you exploit certain vulnerabilities, or if you're looking closely, some of them may be obvious. You may see the credit right there on the screen and it may be obvious. Some other ones might not be as obvious. And many of them you're going to have to exploit a specific vulnerability to find that credit. When you find the credit, that's going to be what you're going to use to score points. You'll go back to the scoring application, you'll type in your code name, and you'll type in the credit you found, the value of the credit you found, and you submit it. So you'll know when it's there, but you'll also have to be looking for it, right? They're not always going to be obvious. It's not going to pop up a message that says, "Congratulations, you exploited this." Like I said, some will be more obvious, some will be less obvious, and you're gonna have to make sure to be looking for them.
All right, thank you. And I see another question. Jade is typing something, so we should have another question shortly. Okay, Jade is asking, where do you submit the credits?
So you'll get all that link in the email, but it's basically going to be so once you register, you'll get an email that has all the URLs for you, right? It'll give you the URL that you test at, and it'll give you the scoring URL. But the scoring URL is just score.inutilam.com, right? It's just a simple form. It'll ask you credit and code name. Put those two of those in, click submit, and it'll show you.
Thank you.
All right.
And then another question came through. Will there also be a leaderboard that everyone will be able to see?
The scoring application, when you score, you'll be able to see the other code names and how many points they've scored. So on that scoring application where you go to score your points, you'll be able to see all the code names and you'll be able to see all the scores that each code name has.
Okay, and then can all team members be working on the URL at the same time?
Obviously, you will do it and help each other out.
Hey, Jesse, you kind of cut out on the answer. Do you mind repeating your answer?
The same URL at the same time. Everybody can be sharing that one app. You
I'm not sure if it's.
members-
I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if it's just me, but that whole thing cut out.
Yeah, Jesse mentioned earlier he was having connectivity issues, so
Okay.
he might be facing that right now. So we can maybe just give it a second for him to see if he
Okay.
can reconnect. Yeah.
All right, let's try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hopefully that's better. So yeah, sorry about that. Yes, one URL per team. Everybody can be testing that simultaneously at the same time. But you do want to collaborate with your team during the process, and if you're doing anything that makes changes, you would probably want to communicate those to the rest of your team. So you know they're not banging their head against the wall. So for example, if you change a password, you probably want to tell the other teammates that you've done that. But you can you guys will all test and all test at the same time. That's the intended way.
All right, perfect. And then to confirm, the email that they will need is hackerchallenge@visa.com, correct?
Yeah, that's so you can use the Visa Discord channel, the Visa Discord channel, or you can email me directly at hackerchallenge@visa.com, and that either way will work.
All right, so it looks like that might be all the questions. Students, last call. Any other questions that you may have while we have Jesse on the line? All right, it looks like we might be all set. So thank you so much, Jesse, for your time and for all the information for our students. Students, just to let you know, this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel, and we'll send a link to it. That way you guys can review this information as many times as you need throughout the week.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you. Then I will drop off and I'll go post some of this information in the Discord channel and send out some emails, and everybody can get started. Thank you.